Final Fantasy is no stranger to the spiritual world. Since we first entered World A, gods have been a frequent companion on our journey, sometimes as our ally, other times as our enemy. Those who worship these gods, usually in the form of organized religion, are also a familiar sight across the series, though they usually appear as antagonists. Through its excellent storytelling, Final Fantasy has repeatedly warned us about the dangers of blindly worshipping those who promise salvation. But Final Fantasy VIII, unlike many of its contemporaries, is a world with very few mentions of religion or God. In this video, we're going to examine why this might be and try to answer a very simple question. Why is there no religion in Final Fantasy VIII? First of all, I'd like to state the obvious before anybody mentions it in the comment section. Religion isn't a major factor in Final Fantasy VIII because the developers didn't want it to be. As the follow-up to the blockbuster Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII needed to stand out as its own game, and rehashing themes of the afterlife, otherworldly power, and the folly of trying to play God just wasn't what the team intended for the game. However, I think there are a lot of in-world reasons to explain why religion never seemed to take off in Final Fantasy VIII's post-conflict world, compared to somewhere like Spira. The first is the destruction of Centra. Depending on where you look, the last lunar cry wiped out the entire continent of Centra either 80 or 100 years ago. As such, we know very little about the Centran culture or people. We do know that they built the 3 airships that would later become garden schools, suggesting they may have been skilled architects and engineers. The only building to survive the lunar cry is the Centra ruins, a large tower-like structure protected by a golden frame. The ruins are laced with a number of mechanical puzzles, but also with religious architecture, such as the stone gargoyles and stained windows. Most importantly, the ruins are where we meet Odin, the chief god of Norse mythology. If we defeat him before the timer runs out, he joins our party as a non-controllable guardian force, who helps us out in a late-game boss battle against Cypher. R.I.P. King. But if we don't get to him before the time runs out, he says this: "The heavens hath decreed thy fate. Perish by my sword." This is one of the few references to the idea of an afterlife, and therefore of a religious belief, that we encounter throughout the entire game. The other are the islands closest to heaven and hell, which, ironically, are both full of monsters. But I'll get to that in a second. All of this suggests 2 things. 1, the mention of hell and heaven, and the latter by a god no less, suggests that there is a belief in an afterlife. And 2, the Centrans may have had a stronger connection to religion and spirituality that was lost in the lunar cry. When they died, their beliefs died with them. I also think the lunar cry itself is a major reason for the general disinterest in religion among the remaining continents. Organized religions depend on faith in the unseen and all-powerful. The idea that an omniscient, benevolent being with powers some would consider magical is out there, somewhere beyond our realm. The lunar cry not only wiped out an entire continent and people, it introduced entire new species of creature with otherworldly powers. These monsters were not friendly, and their arrival also caused the mutation of native plant and animal species, which then became both more magical and more hostile. Hi, editing me here. I never actually finished my train of thought on this. What I was trying to say is that in other games like Final Fantasy X, religious organizations are empowered by the fear of the unknown. So no one knows what sin is, where it comes from, why it attacks, or how they stop it. Yu Yevon's teachings give hope that something can be done against this kind of overwhelming and unending chaos. So it's the fear of the unknown and the need for hope that creates a strong faith. But in Final Fantasy VIII, everybody knows what the lunar cry is, where it came from, why it happened, and when it'll happen again. So there's no fear of the unknown and no need for hope, which means there's really no room for faith or organized religion to develop. The spread of monsters to this world normalized magic to the point of mundanity, but technology developed faster, and soon it became possible to not only harness this magic, but control it. If you can own a god, and what really are the guardian forces, if not minor gods, sometimes literally, then why would you worship them? When you can make your own miracles through the power of human science, what's the need for God? Don't humans themselves become an almighty? It also makes you reconsider how easy it is to find and then kill Odin. He's just sitting there, in the middle of what was once the Centra Empire, waiting to be found. It shows the general disinterest in the old gods once the people who worship them are no longer there. Odin is killed in one hit by a mere mortal, symbolizing the dominance of machinery and humanity over these old gods. It's also important to remember that the world of Final Fantasy VIII has, by the time we leave it, suffered through 2 world wars caused by omniscient godlike beings, the sorceresses. The sorceresses are the closest thing this game has to a true god. They are more powerful than anybody else alive. Their magic is unpredictable and all-consuming, and with the advent of time compression, they are everywhere all at once. They can also inspire a borderline religious devotion in their supporters. Think of the crowd at Adia's coronation, let's say. Or how quickly Cypher becomes enthralled to Ultimecia after she convinces him that he can have everything he desires if he would only leave everything and follow her. After 20 years of Adele and then Ultimecia, it would be a hard sell to get anyone in Final Fantasy VIII to worship an all-powerful being ever again. Especially because, according to Galbadian legend, the power of the sorceresses originated from a god known as Hein. Hein is the only original god mentioned in-game, and is described as a lazy trickster who created humanity, only to murder all the children and escape justice by hiding his magic in the bodies of women and girls. This is the only explanation for the origin of the sorceresses given in the game, but the Ultimania suggests that this could just be a myth. If it is just a myth, it's worth questioning if the sorceress wars, the lunar cry, and declining trust in magic may have altered the way these legends were passed down. Perhaps a modern audience adapted the story of the sorceresses and Hein to reflect their own fears and beliefs. If the legend is true, then it adds a deeper level of understanding to the general distrust that the population of this world have towards the concept of godhood. Even the existence of such a legend is interesting, because the world of Final Fantasy VIII is very science-focused. Magic is something that can be studied and explained with facts and theory. More importantly, magic can be controlled by technology, allowing ordinary humans the ability to channel the power of the gods. And yet, people still rely on these ancient myths to provide some sort of explanation for the power of the sorceresses. Sorceress magic is the last great unknown, but its association with Adele and Ultimecia have turned people away from anything otherworldly or magical, and towards the human creations of technology and machinery. Again, sorry, I never explained where I was going with this. I was trying to say that I think because people were so afraid of Adele and the unknowable ancient godlike power that she has, that they were more likely to trust in more practical things like human invention rather than turning to faith or belief in the otherworldly. We see this play out in Fisherman's Horizon, where the survivors of Adele's regime have sworn off the use of magic and in favour of mechanics. It's also very telling that we only hear these negative versions of the sorceress mythology in Galbadia. After the fall of Adele, the Delling dictatorship became the greatest power in the world. In a way, the dictatorship replaces the need for a religion in Galbadia, acting as an almighty power that is always present and always watching. The Sorceress War devastated the continent only a few short years ago, and it is not uncommon for survivors of war or conflict to become disillusioned by the idea of religion and the afterlife. When the only examples of godhood are Hein and Adele, the idea of worshipping gods or having faith is likely too ridiculous for the citizens of either continent to fathom. And with the recent advent of time compression, even the afterlife becomes blasé. Who cares about heaven or hell when you've seen the whirling vortex of time up close? So why is there no religion in Final Fantasy VIII? Well, because the world has nothing it wants to worship. One dictatorship and 2 sorceresses are more than enough for a weary, distrustful population who developed their technology faster than their gods could keep up. After all, what's a god to a non-believer?